Hi, Sam Bell here. I'm here with this awesome Two Notes Engineering Cab M pedal. They've recently released a new update for the software which comes with this pedal. Now, this pedal has been demoed numerous times by lots of great people like Rabea and Quayle, and there's lots of information about what the pedal does. But in a nutshell, it is a cab emulation or speaker emulator pedal, meaning Two Notes have their own cabinets which you can get from their website. It also comes preloaded with these cabinets. And you can move the mics about, you can change the EQ, you can do all sorts of great things to get a realistic cabinet sound to your in-ear monitors or direct to recording desk or PA front of house. The new updates allow us to further enhance our sound. So for that demo you just heard, I was going direct into my Laney IRT SLS preamp, and that's going straight into this pedal unit, and then I've got my preset here set up. The preset is called Sexy Sam. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to demonstrate the sound with a crunch tone. Here it is. And for this preset, I'm using the Uber 75 4x12 speaker, which is based on a T75 style cabinet. The kind of thing you get of classic Marshalls, kind of slightly modern. It's got a nice broad mid-range. It sounds quite good for the modern metal and rock kind of sound. So the new features, let's talk about the new features. So I've got it all lined up here on my PC, and I'm just going from the USB into the computer. The software is free, and if you have the Cab M pedal, then you just sync it up and it works directly with that. You can also do this via Bluetooth on your phone. So the new features are, we have a noise gate, we've got a new preamp section. So with the previous version you would go into the power amp section, but now you have an option of having the newly added preamp section, which we'll talk about in a moment. For the meantime, I'm not using that with this particular tone because I've already got a preamp for my amp. We've also got the two mics as usual, and then we have the enhancer and a reverb. Now the reverb's been there before, but this is actually being enhanced so you can go between room and ambient sounds. So at the moment it's just set to room in a studio. Okay, let me just run through some other sounds. So this is it with a clean tone. So as you can hear, there's literally a slight bit of slap back on there. And then you've also got the EQ, which is part of the original system that it had, but now we can further enhance that with the enhancer, which can change the EQ. I've got all of these things running on this particular preset. But first of all, let's just have a look at the reverb. Now what I like about this is before you would have just the presets. So if I changed it now to the cathedral setting, this is what you'd normally get on the previous version and this version. A nice But now we can actually change the characteristics of that cathedral reverb. We actually have the option to change the size, the echo, which means the kind of, I guess you could sort of call it post delay that you get on the ambient sound. And then you've got the colour, so if it's quite a bright sounding reverb or quite a dark sounding reverb. So now you have more options to control that ambience. And then you can switch between the actual room sound of that ambience or the actual post ambience of that. So this is the room ambience of the cathedral reverb. And now we're going to click the ambience button and we get this. So as you can hear, you're actually getting the ambient sound of the reverb rather than the actual room sound. You're getting the after production of that sort of tone, if that makes sense. It just gives you more options. So let's just go back to what I had it set before. I had it on Studio A, and well, it's probably really noticeable now. We're going to actually play with the parameters of this reverb. So here it is, just set it as room. And now we're going to change it to the ambient setting. So now you can hear, it's like you're stood in the corners of the room and you can only hear what's happening in the corner of the room. So we'll change the size of that now, just to make it a bit bigger. Let's put a bit more echo on that as well, so it's a bit more exaggerated. And I'm going to mix in a bit more there, a bit more of the reverb. Let's do that with a bit of lead. So really expands the sound. It's nice to have a quality sounding ambient thing on the direct thing. Here it is with, here's the sound of the actual cab sim without the reverb. So this is just the cab and the mic with a bit of crunch. So that's like a really close sort of sound, great for recording, but with a bit of ambience if you're using in-ear monitors, just makes life a bit nicer. The other feature I really like, and this is very helpful with this particular unit, is the enhancer feature. So I'm going to turn the reverb off so we just get a really dry sound. Now I turn the enhancer off, it still sounds good to me, but it just doesn't have quite as much life to it. Now this is something, if we're going direct from a preamp of an amp or a pedal board, you don't have that valve stage really going. There is a power amp option of course within this pedal, but to really get that feel of the tubey response that you would get from playing through a live amp, the enhancer is just a great way to get that feel back and make the sound more 3D. Now on the enhancer you've got an option of body, thickness and brilliance. Now I've got my body and thickness kind of set around midway, and then the brilliance of that is all the way full. So that's where I get my sort of tone. It brings out all the character in the sound. Let's just turn the brilliance down just so you can hear how that affects the tone. So that becomes a lot more darker sounding. Okay, and then we'll move that up a bit just to see how that sounds now. It's really nice for the clean tone actually. If I just go to a clean tone and give you a bit of a... So it gets the nice details out there, and that's just the clean channel of the amp straight into here with the cab sim, with the enhancer on. I've got the EQ engaged here, but it's very, very subtle, because now I've got the option of having the enhancer, which is part of the new update. I find actually the EQ on the amp or the pedal I'm using does enough, but whereas the EQ now you can use it here to really sort of tweak, and all I've done really is boost 2K about 1 dB, and it's just so slight, so you can sort of use this to tune your sound to the room if you're going out of the PA or your in-ear monitors. The other thing I really like about this, I'm just going to dial up a really high gain sound now with my volume up. Now I've got single coils, so you can hear that noise. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the gate and click learn with the volume up. And now I've lost all that noise, and when I play, that's a very gainy sound as well. That's the boost and everything going on. So it's not too much of an intrusive gate. Obviously I'm playing with a very crazy sound there with the neck pickup on a single coil with electricity. I've got a nearby train station you can hear through these pickups. Quite useful of course, and that's just on the soft mode, so it's not ultra bitey, but it's very useful for, you know, when we're playing lead stuff with high gain. Okay, so perhaps the most awesome part of this new update is the new preamp feature. Now before we just had the power amp feature, which is brilliant in its own right, and of course there's lots of places you can hear people going through those, but I want to talk about this new preamps feature. So now I've got everything running as before. I've got no reverb, the enhancer's on, a bit of EQ, gate and power amp. Actually, just for those who want to know, I'm using the PP push-pull EL34 power amp, and I've got a dynamic and ribbon mic both sort of on the cab. That's been the same throughout this whole video. But I've now plugged into my pedal board. I've got a tube screamer style overdrive, I've got an amp style overdrive, a delay, a reverb and a tuner. So classic kind of pedal board setup. Now often I know when I go off on gig I borrow backline normally, and you plug straight into a clean amp and with your pedal board and get your tones from there. Now with the Cab M we can actually have our virtual preamp, which is kind of replacing the need to plug into an amp completely, and you just go straight from the pedal board into this 2 notes Cab M and then into the preamp. So here is the sound. I've disabled the preamp just so you can hear how the guitar sounds direct into that. Now I quite like the sound of a DI guitar, but here it is with the preamp engaged, okay? So it sounds a lot more realistic, a lot more character, but it's got like a tubey feel to it. It's meant to give you that extra layer of realism, and it obviously sounds more alive than just a DI guitar. So for this, I've got there's a gain, there's a treble, mid, and there's a bass. You can also have the preamp work for a bass guitar as well. So I'm just going to go and make sure. Yeah, so here's the guitar tone. So it sounds pretty realistic. Now what's the most important thing here is that it integrates with our pedal board. So I'm going to put on the tube screamer now. I'm going to get a bit of a crunchy kind of sound. So that sounds pretty cool with the tube screamer on. I'm going to put a bit of ambience and a bit of delay onto that. And we're going to play some chords. Now, of course, with all of this, it's important to remember that you're having to really work with the software on here, so the EQ and the enhancer becomes more important, especially when you're just going from your pedal board into the preamp. You do have the option of changing. I mean, even though we've got the guitar preamp there, we can actually make it a bass preamp, and here's the same sound actually with that instead. So as you can hear, that's EQ'd differently for a bass guitar, but that doesn't mean necessarily it has to be for the bass. You can, depending on your pedal board, depending on what kind of guitar you're playing, what kind of sounds you want to get, really these updates are there for you to shape your tone more betterly to what you need to use. So we're going to go now, and I'm going to have more of a high gain sound. So here's the sort of Marshall style overdrive with the preamp on. Okay, so that is the Torpedo 2 Notes Cab M update. Now don't forget, this video really was for me to show you what the features are, just to make people aware, because they've released this awesome update, and I think just makes this super useful for any touring musician or studio player who needs to make their rig smaller. And more often nowadays everyone's using in-ear monitoring or going direct to PA, so it's nice to have a quality unit that actually authentically replicates your tones in a direct setting. So if you've enjoyed this video, then please hit like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Also be sure to check out some of the links in the description below to some of my favorite demos by some of my favorite players of this same unit from when it was first released, and also to hear some different perspectives on how to use this, because there's so many different ways it can be used, and for me it's been incredibly invaluable with my work that I do, often playing in theatres, often playing at places like Lick Library, recording at home, being able to get my amp tone at a quiet level and be able to really play with it and have it in a box which can just stick on my pedal board is just incredible. I wish I'd got one earlier, to be honest, so do check it out. The 2 Notes Audio Engineering Cab M with the new update. It's a surefire way to getting your tones to the next level.